Welcome to the Sports Trading Card Hall of Fame. Today I'm going to be introducing Chapter 10. This is going to include three topics, one of which is I'm going to be inducting Tallboys into the Binder of Fame. I also want to be talking about the 1990 Pro Set Vince Lombardi Trophy hologram. And I also want to talk about Finest. And in terms of Finest, I'm not talking about like the 92 set or the 93 set. I'm talking about Finest overall. The impact it had on the hobby and the significance that it had in the landscape of sports cards. And the reason it's so significant is because it never really fit entirely into a category, and it didn't define a new category. It was kind of its own. It was a benchmark that was already beyond everybody else, that gave the hobby a really good feeling for just how much it was going to have to evolve. Because there are four major periods where the sports card industry really jolted, and they're all in a pretty short period of time. 1981 was the first of these four events because that was when Topps suddenly got competition with Fleer and Don Russ. And it created a sports card industry, because prior to that, sports cards were just whatever Topps created. And then all of a sudden, Topps had competition, which meant that for collectors, instead of just getting the Topps card, now there was some diversity to the hobby. Not a lot changed until 1989, when, in the case of baseball, they added Upper Deck, which, I mean, in 86 they had Sportflix, 88 they had Score, 89 they had Upper Deck. So it's not like adding a new card company in the baseball market was that big of a deal, except for the fact that Upper Deck was so distinct as what we would know as a premium brand. But at the same time as that, over in basketball, NBA Hoops joined Fleer and suddenly created competition for Fleer. And then over in football, not only did Score jump over into football, but also Pro Set was created for football, which meant that the entire sports card market doubled overnight. And that kind of explosion of engagement was something that really popped everyone's eyes open. So that was the second big event. And then the third big event was just 2 years later in 1991, when all of a sudden everybody had a premium brand. So in 1990, we had Leaf as a premium brand for Don Russ. We had Upper Deck, which was a premium brand, Skybox, which was a premium brand, and Action Packed, which was a premium brand. Bowman really wasn't. It was just kind of there. But there were four premium brands in 1990, and then all of a sudden in 1991, Score added Pinnacle, Topps added Stadium Club, Fleer added Ultra, and Pro Set added Platinum, even though that really didn't mean much. But that meant that the premium brands doubled in number, which is something that we've already heard. And so now, in 1991, there was a very clear two-tier market where we had basic cards and then we had premium brands, and the whole market was almost balanced between the two of them, to an extent. But it was in 1992 where a kind of a preliminary shot was fired where Topps created Finest. And this was not a regular set, this was a test set, but it showed everybody that all of a sudden, just as the hobby established a premium tier, now all of a sudden there was going to be a whole new tier. And in 1993, whether as a direct response or something that the companies were already going to be doing, an ultra premium tier was created. And so Score created Select, Pacific created Prism, Fleer created Flare, Upper Deck created SP, which was the standard bearer for that tier. But then Finest was released in both baseball and in basketball. And when Finest was released, it didn't fit with any of the others. It was just at a whole nother level. And it would not even have competition for a while. That's actually not entirely true, because the next year Bowman's Best came out, and that was competition straight across the table within the family. But what we got when we got the ultra premium card tier, which is what this was, we right from the outset had multiple tiers within that, because ultra premium is not about tiers. It is about the high water mark and everything beyond. So by 1993, suddenly we had a three-tier system. We had basic cards, we had premium cards, and then we had really exotic cards. That was the way that the market was built. You fit somewhere into those three tiers. Basic cards is for basic collectors. premium cards is for serious collectors, and then the ultra premium was for cards that you didn't need, cards that you just wanted to collect because they were really special. And within that upper tier, you could go anywhere with it. You could have a lower tier premium set, or you could ultra premium set, or you could have something that was really exotic. And just about every single year, there was something added that really reshaped it. Because like I said, in 1993, we started off with Finest. In 1994, we added Bowman's Best and Emotion. In 1995, well, all of a sudden we got Crown Royale and we got Select Certified. In 1996, we got SPX. 1997, we got Totally Certified. 1998, we got Topps Gold Label. There was no, basically what the 1990s was everything was growing and growing and growing and just kind of evolving, kind of free form. In 89, 91, and 93, there were benchmark years where something very significant happened. But after 1993, that wouldn't happen anymore, because what Finest established was this understanding that it was no longer a well-structured system. The whole card market was going to be evolving into a world where there were just way too many options, and that was what we would get to know, to the point where Finest dropped into kind of a mid-tier ultra premium brand that was just reliable year after year after year. So in a nutshell, that was the importance of Finest, which was to establish a down the road mark that everybody would be trying to achieve right at the same point where everybody was making a preliminary step into the world of really exotic cards. I'm going to get into that further in a separate video, so that will be coming in probably a couple of weeks, not sure when it'll happen, but that'll be a standalone video. I'm also going to be talking more about the 1990 Pro Set Vince Lombardi Trophy hologram. This is a card that is not talked about enough, for one simple reason: because it's not baseball or really basketball. Most of the cards that are really famous are baseball cards, and that's because baseball is the standard bearer for Americana and for sports cards. And so there are lots of famous famous baseball cards over the years. And in 1990, the card that everybody talks about is the Reggie Jackson autograph. They also talk about the Bo Jackson football baseball card, which is interesting. They talked about the 1991 because there was an 89 one over in football that nobody ever talks about. Not to mention the fact that they like to talk about the Frank Thomas Topps era card. Those three cards are the big 1990 story cards, even though arguably the bigger one was over at Pro Set with the hologram. There are a number of things that come into why that card is so important. I'm not going to be getting into those here. Well, I'll talk a little bit about it. But basically, the football was still kind of coming into its own, and Pro Set was coming into its own as well. In 1989, Pro Set had created an SP card dedicated to Pete Rozelle. That was a really cool special card. The idea that there was a card that was more rare than regular cards in the set that you could pursue as a standalone card. In 1990, they decided to do the same thing with a couple of different cards, whether that was the Super Pro card, the Santa Claus card, the Payne Stewart card. There were a number of them. But there was one card very unique that they added as an SP card, which was a hologram. And this was interesting on a number of different levels. The first of which is that, well, holograms were an upper deck thing. They were not definitely not a Pro Set thing. And yet in 1990, in mid-1990, Upper Deck was not making collectible holograms. They had the team logos, but by the time that Pro Set was released in 1990, they were only doing those team logo holograms. They were not doing anything that was actually a special collectible. Holograms for them was more about product quality and integrity. It wasn't about the really fun things you could do with holograms, because at that point inserts were not thought of as chase cards. They were filler cards. It was like an addition. You know, Topps was doing its baseball, or was doing its bubble gum, and Upper Deck was doing its hologram stickers. That was just the way that they thought about it. And so when Pro Set launched its 1990 release, which happened to have a, not even one per case, far more rare than that, a hologram that was a really high quality hologram that was serial numbered to 10,000, for crying out loud. It was the kind of thing that creates a phenomenon. And at about the exact same time they were launching that was when Upper Deck did its Reggie Jackson autograph. So they're pretty much contemporaries. But the Reggie Jackson card doesn't really stand out. It's not distinct because we're used to seeing autographed cards in display cases. So if you saw the Reggie Jackson, you'd have to know why it was special. Whereas if you looked at a display case and there was this hologram of the Lombardi Trophy, you would look at that. It didn't matter if you were football or not. You'd look at it and it would lock you in and get you engaged. And I can say that from personal experience because I grew up in a town where we had a card shop. It was a card and paraphernalia store, and they had a display case, and that card was in there, and I can't tell you how much that was just a draw. I looked at that card and said, someday I'm going to own one, someday, and it took me decades until I did. But it was iconic. It stood out. And it was also a card that was so rare that nobody could really honestly expect to pull one out of a pack, because we're not talking about one per couple of boxes or one per case. No, we're talking about one per 100 boxes or so. It was that kind of a difficulty getting your hands on the card. And so that meant that it was a card that anybody in the hobby was blessed to be able to own. Even better if you had the ability to pull it out of a pack. It was the kind of thing where you just kind of give up and then maybe one day you might get surprised. And there was a lot of enthusiasm about trying to pursue this card, to the point where some people were actually taking metal detectors trying to find which case included the card. So there are a lot of things I want to talk about with the card, but that gives you a basic idea of how significant this card was, and kind of a teaser for what I'm going to talk about in the standalone video. But since we're talking about football and famous cards, let's talk about the famous old card for football, which is the Tallboy, which is what I'm inducting into the Binder of Fame. Now, for football, the vintage card world for football is the kind of thing where you either know it or you don't. There's not a lot of iconographic cards in the football space that stand out for collectors. So if you talk to the average collector, they would understand what a couple of famous baseball cards looked like. They'd understand what the Griffey looked like, probably the Nolan Ryan rookie. They would definitely know the 52 Mickey Mantle, obviously the Honus Wagner. There are a number of cards that we just know inherently because we see them all the time. They're famous baseball cards. But what about famous football cards? I mean, are people going to know about a Sid Luckman or Sammy Baugh card, or are they going to know what the Jim Brown rookie card looks like? They might know what the Joe Montana rookie card looks like, probably the Dan Marino. But outside of that, are they going to know what the Terry Bradshaw rookie looks like? There's one rookie that they probably are going to know, and that is the Joe Namath rookie card. And the reason that the Joe Namath rookie card is so famous isn't so much because he's famous, because, Johnny Unitas was a better quarterback and a more storied quarterback, so we should know what his rookie card looks like. Joe Montana is a lot closer to our time, and his rookie cards are more prolific, but they're not as iconic. Because with Joe Namath, he happened to have a rookie card during the Tallboy year, 1965. And the big advantage of the Tallboy is the fact that what the real estate provides to the card designer is there's a big background, and then the team name is very prominent up above the head. And the way that it's laid out is everything has so much space that what you need for the card to be iconographic is all there. And so when you look at that card, it's more distinctive than just about any other football card you're going to see. 85 Topps is one of the few football cards that is as distinctive as that one. And so, but in the case of 85 Topps, you got, Irving Fryer, you got Warren Moon. You don't have a lot of famous rookies in the 85 set, but the 1965 set, you got a whole bunch. And so those are really iconic cards. And for a history-starved area of sports cards where there is a lot of history, we just don't know it. Having a card as iconic as that is really helpful, and it means that Joe Namath is arguably a more famous player than he probably should be, because it's a lot easier to recognize him for his style, for his rookie card, for the storyline about Super Bowl III. All these things play into a really unusual narrative for him that's convenient. But the fact is that for football, the history of sports cards, there are really only two football cards that stand out: the Tallboys and then the 1955 All-American cards. Past that, it's just not, we in football have not been blessed with the type of iconographic cards that they have in baseball, not because those cards are better designed, but because the conversation is stronger and Tallboys stand out. But they don't just stand out for football, they stand out for basketball too, because while there were 3 card sets that predated the 1969-70 top set, that is kind of the beginning of serious basketball cards, because it is the beginning of the first period of standard every year releases of cards. And it is a card that it's not as distinct as the 65, but it has a more classic look because of the way that the filigree on the corners works around the portrait, and the fact that it has such an insane number of rookies in it really helps as well, which fully round out this card. So it means that for basketball cards, this is really the iconic year. You could argue 57 tops. That was definitely a very good year to choose to talk about iconographic early basketball cards. But really the 69-70 set, that is the one that stands out the most. It is a card that almost looks like it was designed to be iconic. And so for basketball collectors, just like with football collectors, Tallboys are a big part of their heritage. And so it's wonderful that in 1992, the NFL brought back Tallboys in the form of Game Day, and we were able to enjoy those with Game Day and Jam Session, as well as Power Play. We had a whole period in the mid-90s where we were able to collect Tallboys, and it created a different kind of vernacular for the theme of these oversized cards. And it makes them more of a 90s card than it does a 1960s and 70s card, which is where the cards originally came from. But it also allowed for us as collectors to be able to look at them as more mainstream and really be able to enjoy them. So that, again, I'm going to get more into that on the standalone video, which will be coming up down the road next week, couple weeks, whenever it comes out. Definitely look for that. And in case you're curious, I've already done a Stories of Cardboard about this that was done, I think, last year. So you can check that out in the meantime. But other than that, those are the 3 stories that I'm going to be talking about over the next 3 weeks. So if you have any stories to talk about with any of these cards, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say about it. Definitely look for the videos that have come out. Check out the other videos I've done. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Thank you very much for watching.